We're looking at probably one of the most famous stories tonight in the Bible, and so tonight we're going to be looking at this lesson, chapter 2, and we'll go all the way through the end of the chapter, hopefully, verse 25, chapter 2, verse 1 through 25. There's actually a lot. There's a lot of time that's here. It's actually over 40 years that is in these 25 verses. So probably a good bit more than 40 years that's in these verses. And so we're going to be looking at this and kind of a compact time. So a lot more happened than what's in this chapter. I joked about last week about the movie The Ten Commandments. There's so much, the first part of that movie, it's a long movie anyway. It's like 3 hours. And Hollywood took a lot of liberty in making up a few things as far as what probably happened, in between all that and conversations that were had, which is fine, as long as they don't go against what the Bible says. I don't have a problem with that. That's kind of like The Chosen. We've watched that, and there's, they take a little bit of liberty to add some backstory there that could have been, but as long as they get the real, the Bible in it, really what happened there, and it doesn't draw you to believe something besides, that's contrary to what the Bible says, I think we're okay there. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Ten Commandments was so popular, is because they didn't try to do that. Of course, that was back when Hollywood was still halfway decent. And but tonight we're looking at this, verse 1. It's really sectioned off into 4 different sections. I gave you an outline. You see the baby in the basket, verse 1 through 10. And then you see Moses escapes to Midian, 11 through 15, the marriage of Moses, 16 through 11, and the misery of Israel, 23 through 25. So again, there's a lot that happened here. We start out with Moses being a baby. What had happened in chapter 1 for that to be such a dangerous thing for the Hebrew people? Yeah, they were killing all the male children. So verse 1, you start off with, and they were doing that for the reason that they were scared that they were overtaking. The Hebrew people the Israelites were getting so many in numbers. Anybody remember how many we talked about? How many they were? Huh? 600,000? Anybody else? Who said that? Oh, 2 to 3 million. Yeah, when you take that, you're talking about men. She's talking about men, women, and children. So everybody. So yeah, 2 to 3 million people. So let that sink in just a minute. 2 to 3 million people. How many people that is? And this is about how many people that's going to cross through the Red Sea. How wide does the Red Sea have to be, that area where God held the waters back and they walked across on dry land? How wide does that have to be? Y'all see if you can dig that information up. When we get there, we'll talk about that. But pretty wide to be able to get 2 to 3 million people across it. And so some amazing things happen here in Exodus. But we're in Exodus because, what does Exodus mean? Does anybody know? Leaving. We're leaving here. Yeah, we're leaving here. Sunday morning, we preached on the resurrection, and this next Sunday will be our last resurrection message. In chapter 15, and it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? We're leaving. because that's what the resurrection, and that's what, the rapture is actually what we'll be talking about Sunday. We're leaving, and yeah, that's what that means. Good one. So verse 1 says, now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. Why does Moses name the Levi? Why does he name the tribe Levite? See, that's a tribe, and one of the 12 sons were Levi, and he was of the tribe of Levi. But why does he name Levi? This is a house of Levi. Say that again, louder. Yeah, they were of the priest line. Yeah. So Moses' parents had at least two boys. One was Moses, and one was, anybody know? Aaron. And Aaron became that priest. And what's interesting is that, a lot of people forget that Moses was also in the line of priesthood. Think about that. He was also in the line of priesthood. So let's look at this. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. Now she was hiding him because she didn't want him to die. They were killing all the male children. In verse 3 it says, and when she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. So I tried to do some research on what this was, and I never really understood it, but it looked a little, this product looks a little bit like a what you would see a cork board. Like if you went out there and stripped down that cork board and you took that off, and it kind of looked like that halfway, and maybe some cane. You see some old cane, and it's like baskets now. What do we make baskets out of now? Huh? Reed. So it's something similar, but whatever it was, it floated. So you can make it float, but to do that, she made sure that she made this pitch. So we see this in verse 1 through 3. And it said that she put. Yeah, I don't think it's just you. I think it's an Amber Alert. Huh? Everybody's except Gene's phone went off. You the man, Gene. Gene Arthur, you the man. Well, mine didn't go off. I've got mine turned on. Every time, I hope I never forget that now that I say that, but every time I put my phone in airplane mode for the service. Airplane mode. That'll do it. But when I turn it off, mine's going to go. All right, so we're looking at this. Moses and his parents, verse 1 through 3. Moses is born to this Levite couple, Amram and Jochebed. And we find out their names actually in Exodus 6, verse 20. And it may have that up there. You can put that up there. Exodus 6:20. Amram took his wife, Jochebed, his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moses, the years of the life of Amram being 137 years. So that was strange. I mean, here we've got, he took his father's sister. How close is that? That's a little odd to us, isn't it? Yeah, that's a little close. People make fun of us here in the South, and we don't do that. People think we do, but we don't. Well, I'll say we don't normally do that. That's not a normal thing, but that is very close. But this was common in this age, in this time. Um, so not that big of a deal here. But they were married, and both of them were in the tribe of Levi. So we see this. We see in verse 3 that she put the child in the basket, and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. Was that strategic? I mean, strategic. Why would you put your child? I mean, would that be something that would be? To me, it's a strange thing to do, unless there's a reason behind it. So, if they're coming to get my baby, or I think they may come to get my baby that's 3 months old, the last thing I'm going to do is put him in a welcome basket and shove him out in the middle of the river, right? Would that be odd to you? So, but what's not odd about this, or maybe what is odd about this, is they no doubt prayed about this and prayed about what to do, and there was strategic behind this. They put the basket in the water where? In the Nile, but where in the Nile? Close to Pharaoh's daughter. But is she not part of the group that's gathering them all up and killing all the male children?
Well, the order was given to throw the children into.
So she did that, huh? Technically, you think she found a loophole? Let's look at Moses and the princess. This will be verse 4 through 10. Excuse me. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. While her young women walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" So this is whose sister is saying this? This is Moses' sister saying this to who? Pharaoh's daughter. So they're having this conversation, and she's she didn't say, "This is my brother," but she says, I tell you what. So we know that Pharaoh's daughter had compassion on the child. So she's looking at this thing like, I'm about to adopt me a baby right here. And that's kind of what she had in her mind. I'm about to adopt. And but the problem is it's kind of like problem that we've been having, that they were completely out of formula, and they couldn't get formula, right? Y'all, that's a joke. What's the problem with Pharaoh's daughter? She was in no physical way able to nurse the child. So you have to find somebody that has child to be able to nurse the child. So Moses' sister says, "I know just the person. What you need to do is to be able to get because it probably would have been looked down upon for her to be able to have an Egyptian mother to nurse a Hebrew child. So the best thing to do is to be able to get a Hebrew mother to be able to nurse the child." Well, Moses' sister says, "I know just the person for that. I know somebody who has recently had a baby, and she can nurse this child." Pretty good plan, isn't it? I mean, if it was strategic that way, that's a pretty good plan. Verse 8, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother, which was her mother too. Okay. So went and called the child's mother, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because she said, "I drew him out of the water." Now that is that's an amazing story. You can tell why they just love making movies out of that and making books and writing, but it's an amazing story for more than one reason, because this didn't just happen. She may have strategically designed this to her best effort, but once she put that baby in the water and pushed that baby out in the river, it was all up to God at that point. I mean, it was all up to God anyway, right? But at that point, when that baby's floating, it's all up to God. And he wound up going to the one person that God wanted him to go to. And it happened that Moses was able to come back, make this big circle and come back, but come back in safety now. And he was protected because he was a Hebrew, but he was adopted as an Egyptian into not only an Egyptian family that was living on the side, had a house on the river, but Pharaoh's daughter. He was adopted into royalty. That's God doing something, right? I mean, why did God do it that way? Why did God? So a lot of y'all are looking at me like, it's an odd question to ask. Why did God do anything anyway? Well, you know the story already. What Moses did. Did Moses need to know? Now we're about to get into some of the stuff that he did. He was able to stay with his mother until he was old enough to wean, and then he moved back to the areas where Pharaoh's daughter was. Started going to school, started learning how to lead, started learning different languages, started learning. He learned all this stuff that he would need, that he would not be able to learn as a Hebrew. But God had him to learn all that for a particular purpose. And that was to lead Israel out of Egypt. So when you one of my favorite verses, I'll just read, y'all don't have to go here, but one of my favorite verses in the Bible, really, and it comes down to this, is Romans chapter 11 and verse 33 says, "Oh the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments, and how inscrutable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor, or who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen." That was Paul's writing to the Romans. In other words, nobody on the face of the earth has a right to be able to question God. And that's at the end of the section of God dealing with the Israelite people during the age of grace, during the church age. But when you think about what happened here with Moses, it's amazing that this happened, that this story happened the way it happened, all the way through. So Moses goes, and we're going to see this tonight. Moses goes through this life, and he sees all this growing up, and he's able to learn all this growing up, and he's able to actually to become a leader. But then something happens. I feel like, and I've always thought maybe he tried to do things a little bit faster than what God wanted him to do things, which I think we really have to kind of watch out there. We kind of have to let God open doors and do things the way in His time. We have to be prepared. So our lesson in this is to make the basket, put on the pitch, and push the baby out into the river. That's our job. So there's a part of it that we do. But then there's a part of it that we have to stand back and we say, okay, God's got this. God, and that's a picture of our life. It's a picture of us being able to just accept what God's plan is. It's a picture of knowing that God's got this. Mothers, how hard would that have been? I can't imagine. You talk about people having an anxiety attack. I don't even think it was a thing then, but she was probably having an anxiety attack. I would have been. I would have been, trust God, but I don't know about this. And as the basket's floating away, you got to be sitting there going, I don't know if it's a good idea or not. We're going to see. As it turns out, we know how the story ends. So we know that God took care of it, and it happened exactly like God wanted it to happen. Today, things will exactly happen like God wants them to happen. He allows other things to happen, but at the end of the day, He's going to be able to, He controls everything. Moses escapes to Midian in verse 11 through 15. One day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. And he looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. In other words, he killed him and he buried him. And when he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together, and he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" So when he looked to his left and he looked to his right, he didn't look very good, did he? Somebody saw something. And what's interesting to me is word travels fast. And apparently it had already traveled to these guys. And they said, "Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. This is the funniest part of that movie to me. I don't know if y'all are going to have to watch this movie with me, I guess. But all these girls are at the well, and they all think Moses is, he is it. He is it. And they all are just trying to get close to him, but there's one that's not. You remember, there's one that's not, and she acts like she could care less, and that's the one that he winds up marrying, Zipporah. So Moses sits down by this well, and we see in verse 16, the next section, the marriage of Moses. 16 through 22. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Now, what's interesting to me is Jethro doesn't have any boys, right? How do we know that? How do we know that? The girls are going to get the water, right? So they came and drew the water and filled the troughs to the water, their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away. So the shepherds had come to the watering hole and to the well, and it says that they basically were giving the girls a hard time, and they had apparently done this more than once, because by the time when they got back, Dad was like, "How'd y'all do that so quick?" But let's look at this. In verse 17, it says, "The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. And when they came home to their father, Reuel said, 'How is it that you have come home so soon today?' And they said, 'An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock.' He said to his daughters, 'Then where is he?'" you, know, you want to know where this guy is. Why would you want to know where this guy is? Think about it for just a minute. You got 7 daughters, and you got somebody that can take care of business up here with making sure your flock gets water. You need to find 7 husbands, and here's one of them. Or at least if I'm trying to make sure, my daughters have a good husband, this is one of them. So verse 20, he said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man?" You see what's coming out in there. Are you crazy? Why did y'all leave him? Call him that he may eat bread. You didn't even invite him to dinner. I mean, he made sure that y'all got water in record time for the flocks, and you didn't even invite the guy to dinner. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. And she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." Last section is a picture that goes back to Egypt. And so Moses is in Midian, and then verse 23 through 25 is a snapshot back to Egypt. But it says in verse 23, "During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew." So here you've got all this going on. That Israel is going to be released. What was that you said, Brother Gene? We're leaving. They're going to be leaving. And then you've got Moses, who spent roughly 40 years as, that we know as an Egyptian, and he goes out and he's a shepherd, and he works for his father-in-law, and he's roughly 40 years there, and then it takes about 40 years for him to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, and so he winds up being about 120 years old. So his life can be sectioned off in about 3 different ways. He changes careers every 40 years, kind of like me. I change careers about every 40 years. So next week we see what's probably the most famous part of this whole story. Anyway, the burning bush. I'll close with this. I may have told y'all this, but when God was calling me in the ministry, I It was for quite a while, and I just didn't know for sure, and I hated. I didn't want to cross that bridge unless I was 100% sure that that's the direction that God was calling. And I remember praying over and over about that. And Brother Sammy seemed like that's all he preached on was me doing what I was supposed to do. And as it turns out, he probably was preaching to the whole congregation. It was just God was dealing with me, and I remember praying that, God, if this is what you want me to do, if you're calling me into some type of ministry, um, it needs to be, a burning bush type experience. And Brother Sammy went to Vina First Baptist Church in Vina to preach a revival, so he was not there that Sunday morning. And Brother Gene Baldwin came to preach, and I just thought, this is awesome because I'm going to get a break. Sammy's been killing me, and I, my mind kept going back to that burning bush, and then Brother Gene Baldwin stands up and he turns to Exodus chapter 3 and preaches out of Exodus chapter 3 about the burning bush. And I was just like, well, it's kind of it happened kind of the same way when I left my former job. Certain circumstances, pushing the baby out in the River Nile, and I prayed. I remember talking to Chris, my boss now, and and he says, well, this is, you think about it over the weekend, and I said, well, I want to pray about it and talk to Gina, and and we'll make a decision. And I remember then that Richard Crumpton, it never was Sammy preaching these sermons, but he got me right up to the point. It was somebody else that was there. It sounds like Sammy was never there, don't it? But Richard Crumpton was preaching that morning, and he preached on crossing the Red Sea and going from one time in your life to another time in your life. And what we've got to do, we need to have a plan. We need to do our part. God will do His part. But we need to be able to build a basket. We need to be able to pray and build the basket and be able to take the step when it's God's time for us to take a step. And God will bless it. He will. So as we move forward and we take a step as a church in doing different things, we're going to be doing some things quite different probably than we ever have. One of those things, we'll be sharing a little more information with you. Our Sunday school is probably going to change. I've really struggled so much with trying to figure out how we need to get back to Sunday school, and we've talked through with, the security needs to be different. We need to be able to have, in children's classes, we need to have 2 teachers in each class, and we need to be able to do this. So the way we're going to set this up in Sunday school is we're going to need at least 11 to 12 children's workers to be able to have Sunday school. 11 to 12. That's everything. It really is. So when everybody was coming in, I was counting people. All right, that one might. Y'all were walking through the door, and I was counting. I was putting a mark down when y'all were walking in. I said, might be able to count on that one. I might be able to count on that one. I might be able to count on that one. But we're going to need teachers. We're going to need walkers. We're going to need people who might be able to help in missions. We're going to need people who might be able to help and do some recreation. We're going to need some people. if you saw what we did during VBS, it's going to be something similar to that. We're going to need a lot of workers. But I can tell you this, that if our focus is on kids, we will be fine. And that's the one thing where I think I was looking at this and couldn't get an answer in anything, is I was so focused on adult Sunday school classes and trying to figure out how to make sure those were right. All along, I mean, had a plan in the back of my head for kids. I'm not even sure we're going to have enough for an adult Sunday school class. If we do, that'd be great. But y'all, we've got to be able to take care of our kids. We have got to be able to teach our kids about Jesus Christ. And if we don't, the world's going to teach everything against Jesus Christ. So guess who it's up to? It's up to us. So be praying about how you can help in that. This is going to be a major different thing. I don't know exactly how it's going to be. What material we're going to use. I don't know. The only thing I know right now is that, and we're looking at different things, but our focus in Sunday school needs to be kids. And we're going to probably have an adult class. But if I laid this thing out and did it the way old Mike wants to do it, he'd have probably 12 to 13 people. Well, and you might say, well, Brother Mike, we don't even have that many kids. But yeah, right now we don't. But we're going to take who we have, and we're going to put every bit of effort that we have in being able to teach these kids about God. And I think if we don't do that, I think we've made a major, major mistake. So be praying about how we can do this. As a church, we just need to get the basket, put the baby in it, put some pitch around it, and let God do what He does best. You believe God can bless that? I believe God can bless that. It may be different than what we've been used to as far as Sunday school goes. Probably will be, but there's some different ministry opportunities. We're going to have a security team. Mark can't do it all. There he sits out there in the foyer. We're going to have to, we'll have to do some different things as far as that. We're going to have somebody volunteer. Maybe 6-8 men volunteer to be on a security team and just take time about. And that way one person's not always sitting back there. But it's unfortunately we're living in this world today that we really need somebody back there in case somebody tries to come in. So it's only smart to be able to do that. I hate that's where we are, but it's where we are. It's irresponsible to be unsafe. So a lot of changes coming. I think for the good. I think it gives people opportunity to be able to grow. And if you've never served in anything before, guess what? All you got to do is to be able to ready your basket and push it out in the water. And God will work a miracle. He really will. Let's stand. We'll be dismissed.
Hey, Brother Mike,
Yes, sir.
how did Moses know he was